Welcome everyone on this new episode of Education Futures. Today I'm very happy to be with Dora Palfi. Hello Dora, good to see you and good to have you on the podcast.
Hi Sonia, thank you so much for having me.
Very happy to have you on the podcast to discuss the future of computer science education and technology education. It's your topic, and we met during one of the fellowships that I co-host, the Female EdTech Fellowships. I'm very happy to have a fellow female founder on the podcast. So as I said, yes, computer science education, technology education are your key topics. Tell us a bit more about you and why you developed that passion to make technology education available to the many.
Yes, thank you. And I guess like by technology and computers now also we mean AI for the most part. But yes, like my background was in computer science and neuroscience. That's what I studied. I initially wanted to be a scientist, but I got into coding and computer science because when I did my first summer research program, I was faced with the reality that any type of research just means working with data and knowing how to, code and use computers. And so the more I spent time in my studies, the more I realized that everything is pretty much like linked to technology, and so that's our future. And then I also worked in the industry and really understood how technology has such a disproportionate amount of power to shape our future, and it gives the skill, like for those who have the skills, it gives an opportunity to build businesses, to solve problems that they themselves have, that their communities have. And so I wanted to make sure that then that skill set is actually available for everyone so that everyone can benefit equally from technology and its impact on our world. And so I think this topic is just as relevant as ever, but more sort of like wrapped around AI today.
And you focused at the beginning very much on girls and educating girls to that topic because you saw a big divide, I guess, between the propension of girls to go into computer science education versus boys. Has it evolved since you started?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we started Imagi, we had a direct-to-consumer approach that meant I spent a lot of time working directly with kids, and actually Imagi initiated from some of my research specifically focused on girls. And yeah, that was based on personal experience and, reading data in the industry. And something that I could relate to. And then as we kind of like developed with Imagi and saw the pull from also schools and just the education ecosystem to use our product, we really realized that if we really want to reach everyone, girls and boys and everything in between, so all gender, we really need to make sure that we make it less sort of focused on one specific underrepresented group. And instead, now we have created a solution that allows introducing computer science and AI and technology in a way that is always project-based and that allows kids to create personally meaningful experiences. So by design, it can be culturally relevant for everyone, and through that, it can be more inclusive.
Absolutely, that's absolutely fundamental. And so I would love to know your thoughts on this. I mean, some people say that learning how to code is not a skill for the future because AI can code maybe better than we. So, what do you think? Should we stop teaching coding and start focusing on something else, like more broadly, generally technological literacy, AI literacy? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think there is like multiple sides to this question and answer. One, like, I definitely think we need to keep up with our world, which is why like we at Imagi have also been kind of like one step ahead. And recently we launched our partnership with Lovable that's supported by OpenAI, so bringing AI code generation to students because we believe that's a skill for the future. That being said, there are a couple of caveats. One, like we really believe in this sort of analogy of the calculator, where kids until today still learn fundamental math in school, and only after they know how to do it can they use calculators. So we really see a value in that kind of like productive struggle of understanding what is code, what is a logic, how to build systems, and there's no like shortcutting in learning. And I've done now a lot of survey and interview with people who work in tech and who use vibe coding tools, and try to understand what makes them good at vibe coding. At the end of the day, what makes someone today really good, like they would just say, oh, clear communication. But what they mean by clear communication is that they know exactly what they want, and so then they can use AI to build that. But if you have no domain knowledge and you've never gone through the process of creating, it's going to be really hard to build something of quality, and also to be aware of the risks, like not to even mention, like exposing data and just like the privacy and security concerns. So I don't think it makes sense to kind of shortcut that. And then the final piece I would say, if we think of like education in general, I mean, in school we learn physics and biology, we learn how the world works, and like my take on it is that more and more of our world is going to be technology, code, and AI. So I think it's extremely patronizing when like AI industry leaders say, and some of them say it is like, oh yeah, don't worry about understanding code, like AI can do that for you. Like, no, like I want to have agency. I want to know how our world works. When all my tech products are down and then I get an error from Cloudflare or AWS, I want to understand that the world is not ending, but I want to have that level of knowledge that at least I know how things work. So I think that's kind of like the responsibility of our education system, to ensure that children understand the world around them.
That's true for computer science education. It's true for everything else, right? I think a lot of young people are asking themselves, why should we learn this if we have an instant response in our pocket? Why should we learn this? And I love your answer. Just we have to continue learning how to think, and on our own, basically, not think through the machine, but think on our own. That's absolutely fundamental. Could you explain what vibe coding is to our listeners who are teachers, parents, who might not know exactly what that is, and maybe the difference between that and the entire no-code movement? Is there a difference? Is it the same thing? I would love to hear your thoughts for our listeners.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if there has been like a completely perfect sort of definition for all of this. I think it's all sort of like a spectrum, right? But at the end of the day, I guess in general we refer to the use of AI to generate code from like a natural language prompt. So I say something in English and then I get code in return. That would be sort of like vibe coding, whereas a lot of no code is more about having like a finished product where I can just like drag and drop elements and have a finished product. But even in vibe coding, it doesn't necessarily mean that you ever need to interact with the code. But vibe coding tools at least would like show you the code that's being generated, so even how everything is built. So I guess at the end of the day, everything is on a spectrum, because there is writing code, which like I don't think anyone anymore like does that in their work without some use of AI. But you could have like different level of involvement from the AI. Sorry, this is just like a real.
So typically, a software engineer would use vibe coding tools on the side, or other tools to help him improve the code that he is doing.
Right, or I think especially like vibe coding, I think comes maybe even before that, or like in today's industry, it can be a really great tool for prototyping. So maybe people who have nothing to do with code can use it. You can use it as a marketer to quickly build a landing page. You can use it as a designer to be able to show interactive, prototypes, versions of your design.
And The leader in vibe coding is called Lovable. It's a Swedish company, and you partnered with them. Can you tell us a bit more about your partnership? Do you think it's critical to that kids and young people learn how to vibe code nowadays?
I think so. On one hand, I just think it's critical that we understand that we cannot just like shut our eyes to all the AI tools out there, because kids will use them anyways. So then we should rather like be proactive about it and teach them how to use it responsibly and effectively and productively. And so that's why I think, we cannot just ignore that this is happening, but instead we need to be a step ahead and bring it to students in a way that they actually learn something. And so that's where like the partnership is also, that's where kind of like the core of it is. So on one hand, we at Imagi, have experience building educational solutions, and we also have experience partnering with schools, making sure that our product is compliant, we don't collect any student data, it's safe, and then we can kind of bring that expertise. And so since we launched this partnership and through OpenAI's financial support, this is actually now completely free until the end of the year for educators across the globe. Educators can sign up to our tool and then enable the usage of Lovable for their students, but it is a kind of somewhat restricted version. So for example, on the version that students open up, they don't see the community because that's not a moderated community. We cannot take sort of like accountability for if the student would see some kind of content there that's not appropriate. So just like these sound like small things, but like important things. Everything is sort of just like unsafe or distracting is removed. And then the other part is that we our expertise is also in developing content, and specifically our sort of initial product, which was what we call creative computer science. I'd say like our expertise and unique skill set lies in taking concepts like from for loops to I don't know what is encryption, and generating, creating lesson outlines and lesson plans and materials for teachers that make learning about this project based and make it fun and engaging. And so we kind of like did the same here. And so the first lesson in our vibe coding course, which is available for free as part of this Hour of AI campaign, is about creating your first game with AI. So kids can build a game on Lovable, and the game itself is also like creating an educational game, but the entire process is supported. So we learn about how to write effective prompts. We kind of came up with this concept of like a prompt menu. So we guide them through how like we have like an initial prompt, and then we set the expectations that there will almost 100% need to be a sort of like a debugging prompt, because things will never just like go perfectly as you first wanted it. So yeah, like that entire process is outlined intentionally, and it is mapped to certain like standards. We primarily relied on the AI literacy framework for this lesson and this course, but in other content we develop, we rely on some other standards.
Amazing. And so this program is free for teachers and schools to join until the end of this year, 2025.
Correct. And of course, our tool is actually freemium, so we always have an opportunity for teachers to use some of it for free so that kids can experience this, but maybe not unlimited. But right now there is a larger usage and unlimited number of students that are allowed to use it.
Amazing. So I'll put the link in the notes, the episode notes. If we have any teachers who are interested, that's a great opportunity for sure. And so what do you think should be taught in the future, in the school of the future? If you had to imagine the school of the future, what content should be taught so that we can really prepare our kids, our students, for the world that awaits? And I feel that right now some of our education systems, not all of them, but some are not really preparing kids for this AI-driven world that awaits. So what would you think are some of the key elements that should be taught in the school of the future?
Yeah, so I think, of course, my bias, but this generic like area around the AI literacy, I definitely think this is extremely important. And I think what's really exciting about generative AI tools in that is our entire pedagogy, is that you can use them in a project-based manner so that they can actually be integrated across the curriculum. So it's not necessarily that like you have to have X number of hours of AI, but actually it should be like across the board. And I think that's where the biggest opportunity lies. But then, I personally also think there is some other skill sets that are going to become really important, and around like financial literacy, something that I personally would really push for, and then sort of like emotional intelligence and like communication and project and group work, which I think are the things that are not typically that big of a part of our current education system. Because so I was a keynote speaker at this conference called One Young World recently in Germany, and there was one of the opening speeches was from Natalie von Siemens, and she talked about the work of Siemens in AI. But the part that I loved was she spoke a bit about education, and what she mentioned was that why we need sort of like an education revolution. And I really love what she said, because essentially her point was that our education system focused so much on standardization recently. Like we literally call them standardized tests. But what AI is really good at is anything that's standardized. So that's like completely obsolete. Like we literally have to rethink what is it that's still valuable to teach, and some of the things that I mentioned from before, those are probably like less standardizable, and that's what we need to focus on.
Absolutely. And so what would be like, if you would look ahead in 25 years time, what would be the ideal world where you don't have to do your work anymore? A world where imagi is not needed? Do you think that word that exists and you can achieve that? And if so, what would it be like? What is your dream basically for the next 20-25 years?
I guess like from a mission perspective, right, like the dream is that we have created a solution that can reach every child regardless of gender, background, race, socioeconomic background. But to some extent, unfortunately, that's probably like a continuously needed work, which is not a terrible thing. More like I want to be able to see like actual numbers showing that everyone speaks about education being an equalizer, but actually it can also be the biggest divider because if only like certain type of kids whose parents are really involved and get access to these new things, then actually education is just a divider. So I think that's what I want to see, because we will always need education, but maybe we'll be in a world where education is truly an equalizer and not a divider.
Absolutely, and this is why you're also fighting to get your products into public schools, right? And the public school system in the US specifically, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so like our tool, like I mentioned, is freemium, so we do have users across the globe, but in terms of like where we focus as a business, in terms of like customer relationships, is predominantly in the United States, a little bit in Europe and in the Middle East.
And clearly that's in the United States. We have like you guys have a pretty developed way of integrating technology solutions into schools, and schools can buy it more easily than in other countries. For example, in Europe, where I'm based, where it's a bit harder for schools to buy their own products for technology education and education technology in general. So yeah, it's part of your mission to make it accessible to kids in public schools in the US, and I really hope that you'll also be able to put your product and your initiatives in public schools in Europe soon, but I know
Yes.
it's
I think it's a different approach, but definitely, we're exploring. I think it's just like a different types of go-to market. Like you said, in the US, there is more sort of like distributed decision making, which is really good for when you're starting out and you're looking for your early adopters. But we are actively exploring opportunities to be present in European markets. But it just requires a different approach.
Yeah. And what's your take on the future of jobs and the future of work? Are you worried about the fact that AI is going to replace some of our jobs, especially in coding, in the computer science area, where maybe before you needed 70 software engineers, where now you might need 10 to do the same work with AI. Do you have some thoughts around this topic?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I have lots of thoughts. I think it's there's a couple things here. I do think, for example, there was this article in the New York Times about how young people were fooled into learning computer science, and I was asked on my opinion on this, and I think Sifted included this in an article, so go read that, because I had a lot of thoughts. But I think at the end of the day, the article was kind of missed the point. We're like in a recession, we are in a period where it's hard to get a job anywhere, and I think like someone who studied computer science and took their degree seriously is still in a way better position to adopt to today's careers with AI than someone in another field. So you're kind of just like missing the point. Like, I think the premise of like easily getting a 6-figure job out of college should have never been the reason for studying computer science. Like, that's that's just like, again, shortcutting and not a reality. So I still think it's like tough for everyone, and at the end of the day, one of the most important skills is going to be adaptability and continuing to learn how to learn. And so the jobs are changing, but just like being open to that. I think something that's a challenge, and for example, at One Young World, where I had my keynote speech, it's an event where some of the largest companies in the world send their young delegates. And so this was a topic of conversation and part of my keynote, that a lot of companies are like, oh, I mean, why would I hire junior staff when I can just supercharge my senior staff with AI tools? And that's obviously like very short-sighted, because then if you're building a company that's to be around like for 100 years or 200 years, like, you need to not lose sight of who are your next generation leaders going to be. So that's obviously like extremely short-sighted. But of course, like there's going to be challenges around the job losses, but I would hope that it leads to better life for everyone. It's sort of like industrial revolution. I mean, I don't think anyone is doubting that it was a good thing eventually, and I'm just hoping that as a society and as governments are in a better place to actually take care of people, so that it doesn't have to be as negative.
So are you in favor of limiting how fast we go with AI research?
Yeah, it's a fun question. I literally had a book club last night where our book we read was If Anyone Builds This, Everyone's Going to Die. So right now, and I just finished the book yesterday, so a lot of the gloom around AI development, and so I'm not like I wasn't unfortunately the book didn't inspire me fully to be like, we gotta stop. I definitely see how that would make sense, and unfortunately it's a bit of like a game theory, right? Like, if 99% stop but 1% doesn't, then the whole thing doesn't work. So I'm here to follow this conversation and understand what are the real opportunities to sort of limit, guardrail, ensure safety. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm the I'm the right person to come up with an action plan for now.
What about the other book club members? Did they were they inspired by the book, or was it the same for everyone?
I think it was a mix of like we all kind of contributed, like how likely we think it is that super intelligent AI is happening like anytime soon, and then if it happens, how likely it is that we're all going to die, pretty much, because that's like essentially the scenario that the book discusses, and there were just like very varying percentages on both of these probabilities. And I think at the end of the day, all of us agreed that there should be regulation, I think that's like a no-brainer. And then I think the challenge there is that majority of people working in legislation don't know much about AI, and that's where I think we really need some more urgent, interdisciplinary collaboration to happen. Because, and I think adjacent to the book we're looking this up, but 70% plus of adults, I think in the US or Europe, agree that it should be regulated more than it is right now.
It's not hard. It's absolutely not regulated right now, at least in the US, right? So, but we in Europe have regulations in place, and yeah, we still have wonderful companies building from Europe, right? So I guess some sort of regulation is possible, and yeah, I should have an episode on that part.
Yes, I think you should.
Some regulators who know exactly about the topic. I would love that. Yeah, that would be my last question for you. Is basically who should be our next guests on Education Futures. We're looking to have quite a variety of perspectives. We're looking to have people from the tech space, but also from education, but also we had philosophers. We're looking to have historians, sociologists talk to us about the future of education, because it's something that should be discussed by the entire society, and not just experts in education and teachers, but really the entire society should participate in this discussion. This is why we are an interdisciplinary podcast. So I'm really curious to know your ideas of who we should invite to discuss the topic.
Yes, so I mean, now because of what we just talked about, I have a friend who was actually a software engineer at Google for the longest time, and then at some point he got really concerned, so he went back to get a law degree and then ended up doing a PhD in law. And I feel like I would like to ask him, because I think that's exactly the type of concern we need. And so I think that's one. I think to me, like as I'm looking around, especially now we're speaking Europe, there are some countries like Estonia who already has a nationwide sort of initiative. And granted, Estonia is a smaller country, so maybe it's easier to have something like that up and running around, AI education. And so I think that would be just like a very interesting case and how we might replicate that in other European countries, or even like an EU level. Yeah, those are some of the things that I'm like actively thinking about.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dora, for these two brilliant ideas. I'm looking forward to hearing from your friend. I hope he will agree to join this podcast.
Yes, yeah, I hope so too.
Thank you so much for your time today, and please share any links that you want me to put on the show notes.
Thank you. Yes, definitely check out Hour of AI.
Hour of AI. Noted. Thanks.
Thank you.